Hello everyone. Today we are continuing the chapter Pollination and Fertilization for class 9 ICSE. Today I am going to discuss about the conditions which favor cross pollination. As we discussed in self pollination that bisexuality is important. In the same way, in case of cross pollination, unisexuality is important. Unisexuality means in the plant, staminate or pistillate flowers are present, but they are present on the separate plants. That condition is also called as dioecious. So here you can see if staminate and pistillate flowers are male and female flower, it is written male and female flowers. Matlab staminate and pistillate flowers are present on separate plants, as in case of papaya. So this is one of the condition favoring cross pollination. Second term which is very important is called as dichogamy. Dichogamy means different timing of maturation. In ICSC usually they ask what is dichogamy. So definition of dichogamy is very important. Here you must see that in dichogamy there are two options, that difference in maturation of timing of male part, that is androecium, and female part, that is gynoecium. So if male part, we have two options here, A and B. So in option A you can see if anther matures before carpel, or you can simply write if stamen matures before pistil, then that condition is called as protandry, and we are finding this condition in case of sweet pea, okra, as well as salvia and sunflower. Any one example you should remember. Second case is there when stigma or pistil matures before stamen, then that condition is called as protogyny, which we are getting in case of custard apple. So these two terms are asked in the examination for 2 marks, or definition may come for 1 mark itself. Okay. We have seen in self-pollination opposite to dichogamy, that was homogamy, meaning same timing of maturation. Next we are moving with the point 3, that is self-sterility. That means incompatibility. If pollen grain of the same flower in a bisexual condition, if pollen grains of the same flower is unable to germinate on the stigma of the same flower due to some barriers or could be due to some reasons, then that condition is called as what? That condition is called as self-sterility. Like if the pollen grains will not be able to germinate on the stigma of the same plant, same species. Okay, you can see here. Then we are moving here, you can see they are talking about the unisexual flowers of the sunflower, which is ray florets. That means if ray florets of sunflower you are considering, you must have seen the sunflower which is having this kind of ray floret of yellow color, and the dischlorate are present in the center. So these ray floret, that yellow bright colored part, is consisting of only female part, and the dischlorate is bisexual. So here you can see self-sterility is one of the condition. Next we are moving to the hercogamy. Hercogamy means this stigma is covered by some mechanical barriers. So stigma is the only structure. As we know, the pollen grains are reaching on the stigma. When we are making a carpel, this carpel consists of stigma, style and ovary. So stigma is the part where pollen grains are landing. Suppose this stigma is covered by some structure or some, you can say, paper like structure or polythene like structure. So what may happen? The pollen grains will not be able to reach at the site of pollination or the landing platform, that is stigma. So this mechanical barrier is again creating problem of self pollination, and this hood covering you are getting in some of the most common flowers like pansy, this hood covering the stigma. Just one word you have to remember here. Now heterostyly. Heterostyly means difference in the height of the styles. And anther. So in such flower, stigma and anther grow at different height. If you remember China rose, that is hibiscus. In case of hibiscus, although it is a bisexual flower, but in this bisexual flower, always cross pollination takes place. Because if I am trying to draw the diagram for you, if you remember hibiscus, in case of hibiscus, this stamen and carpel are having this kind of arrangement. These 5 dot like structure you must have seen in the hibiscus This is basically the carpel part, which is hidden inside the staminal tube, and that staminal tube is consisting of infinite stamens. And this staminal tube is consisting of stamen in this way. It is making a continuous tube all along the length of the style. So these stamens are having the lower height as compared to the height of the stigma. So pollen grain cannot jump here. That's why cross pollination is taking place. So here this heterostyly means if the length of stamen is less than the length of carpel, then self pollination is not possible. But opposite, if you can see, in case of mustard, height of anther or height of stamen is more than the height of carpel, then self pollination is possible. So heterostyly is one of the, I am comparing this self and cross pollination so that your doubts will be cleared simultaneously. Next, we are moving up with the example. Heterostyly example is primrose and oxalis. One example of each case we should remember. Now, as we know, in case of cross pollination, we need certain agent. Before starting this topic, let's have a revision of the previous topic once again briefly. We have discussed today the contrivances. This word is also asked in the examination. What are the contrivances for the cross pollination? So when we talk about cross pollination, we have 5 terms over here. The first term, as we discussed, is the unisexuality. Now unisexuality means the plant is consisting of unisexual flowers. Unisexual flowers means which is having either staminate or male flower or pistillate flower in one plant. Dioecious condition is this, as we are getting in case of the papaya. Dichogamy is the second condition, which means different timing of maturation for anther, or you can say stamen and carpel. If anther matures before stamen or stigma, then it is called as protandry. If carpel matures before then anther, then it is called as protogyny. Then we are having self-sterility. Here you can see in the self-sterility, basically stigma is receiving the pollen grain. As you have seen here, I discussed already that if the pollen grains of the same flower or same plant will not be able to germinate on the stigma of the same flower, then this creates self incompatibility or self sterility. Then we talk about hercogamy. Hercogamy is a condition where barriers are present on the stigma and covering it. So if a polythene-like structure or a small bag-like structure is present on the stigma, it will prevent pollination of any kind. So it is one of the reasons self-pollination is not occurring as in pansy. Heterostyly is the next condition where the height of stamen and carpel is not favorable for pollination. As you have seen in China rose, height of carpel is more than the height of the stamen. So self-pollination is practically not possible. So these are the 5 conditions or contrivances which is resulting in cross-pollination. Now, as we know, in cross-pollination, transfer of pollen grain takes place from one plant to another. So obviously we need certain agents. There are varieties of agents in the nature, but we have to discuss only 3 agents in class 9. First is insect, second is air, third is water. So insect pollination is called as entomophily and the flower is called as entomophilus. Here term entomophilus is written. Entomophilus means what? The flower which is having insect pollination is called as entomophilus, whereas entomophily is the condition or the process of pollination by insect. If entomophily is taking place, what should be the conditions or necessary characteristics in the plant? Insect will be attracted only to those flowers which are large, bright colored and having some fragrance. So these 3 points are automatically clear over here. That flower should be very large, it should be brightly colored, and it should have some kind of nectar and sweet smell to attract insects for pollination. But in exam, sometimes they are only focusing on this point and this point. Instead of asking all the characters, they are simply asking which type of anther and pollen grains should be there. and which kind of stigma should be there. Here the anther should be having the pollen grains which is sticky. It will produce large number of pollen grains which are sticky, so that whenever any insect is sitting on the plant to get nectar, these pollen grains will stick on their body and can be transferred to the next flower. And when we talk about a stigma, it is obviously exposed and sticky so that it can easily receive the pollen grains. So these are some of the characteristics. Only 5 you remember, that will be sufficient for carrying out the process. Second, we are having here one more point is given, like if small flowers are there and they are colorful and in cluster, it will make them more attractive for the process of entomophily. Second is called as anemophily. Anemo is A for air, A for anemophily. We have to remember in this case. So anemophily means the transfer of pollen grain is taking place with the help of air. And if air is the agent, obviously it doesn't need any smell, any bright color or nectar. So obviously all dull color flowers are having anemophily over here, as you have seen in case of rice, maize, corn. You must have seen light colored styles are hanging out of the corn cob. So flowers should be small. They does not need any bright color. They should not have any kind of fragrance or smell, and they will not have any nectar also. But what they should have? They should have, again the important point, stamen which are long and hanging out, so that a small blowing wind can transfer their pollen grains for the long distance. Again, the pollen grains should be very light in weight and more in number. So if they are more in number and light in weight, it will be a favorable thing for anemophily. And stigma should again be hanging out and will be feathery and sticky so that it can trap pollen grains. So here we are discussing about 5 major features for anemophily. Number 1, flower should be of dull color. It should not have nectar and you can say fragrance or scent. Next, the pollen grains should be non-sticky and it will be light in weight, more in number, and the style or you can say stigma of the carpel should be well exposed and sticky so that it can trap pollen grains. So these are some of the features of the important features of the wind pollinated flower. Here comes the last, that is hydrophily. Now you'll be surprised to know one thing about hydrophily, that most of the plants in case of hydrophily, they are beautiful and they will be pollinated by insects, as in case of lotus, water lily. Although they are hydrophytic plants, but these plants will be pollinated by the insects because they are beautiful or they are having good smell. But here one diagram is given, and this diagram is of Vallisneria, which is one of the submerged plant. Now this submerged plant is having a unique kind of a spring mechanism of pollination. So hydro means water. So hydrophily means if pollination takes place by water, and hydrophilous flowers are those which are pollinated by water. So here this is a dioecious plant in front of you. The male plant is having the male flowers and female plant is having the female flower. This is one of the female flower and this is the male part. Now this male flower when get mature will be not releasing the pollen grains, rather it is directly releasing the male flowers which is floating at the surface of water because these are light in weight. Meanwhile, the female flower is having a spring-like style, which you can see here. This spring-like structure will be opening up and somehow reaching at the top of the pond where they are growing, so that it can capture the pollen grains which are already present at the surface of the waters. And this way pollination takes place, and after pollination this style will be withdrawing it back to the base, and then this way fertilization is occurring in Vallisneria, which is one of the submerged hydrophytic plant. Now in other cases, like you can say, as I told, water lily and lotus, because these are beautiful. Even Icornia is the terror of Bengal, is one of the plant which is having beautiful flowers. So pollination takes place by insects in the hydrophilous plants. Next we are moving with the artificial pollination, which is done manually. which is again a 2 mark question and very important. Here some features are, okay, I'm missing this. Some features of the hydrophytic plant. I just discussed one example of Vallisneria, which is asked in the exam for 2 or 3 marks. Here some of the features are given for the hydrophilous flower, or you can say plant. These pollen grains should be large in number. Sorry, pollen grains should be large in number. In some of the cases, you must have seen that these pollen grains are coated by mucilage so that will not be decayed by the water. They are having a protective covering. And then in case of the flower, they are having this point we have discussed, no, that they are having ribbon shaped leaves so that it can tolerate that waves and you can say flow of water. So they are having a kind of coating of mucilage to protect itself. They are having ribbon like leaf. They are having large number of pollen grains, and in Vallisneria we are having a spring like a style for pollination. Now some more examples are given here. Ornithophily is one of the example, a kind of pollination where pollination is occurring with the help of birds. So ornithophily is there. Elapophily, when pollination is taking place by elephant. So chiropterophily is also there. Chiropterophily is a kind of pollination which is taking place with the help of the bat. So in this way we are having varieties of pollination depending upon the type of agent. Here we are moving with the next, or you can say last topic for today, that is artificial pollination. Rather we can call it as the artificial hybridization. Three major steps we are following here: emasculation, bagging and tagging. So when we talk about artificial pollination, we are doing it manually. For this, what we have to do, first we have to remove the anthers from the bisexual flower, and these anthers are removed before they are getting mature, because once they are mature they will cause contamination in the stigma. So first of all, anthers should be removed before maturation so that desired pollen grain we can dust on the stigma for the process of pollination. So here we have to see, although they have not given much in your book, like this one word is given, emasculation. The process of removal of anther manually is called as emasculation. Then this is stigma. Suppose this is the flower, sepals. Okay, this is the sepal. You will be having sepals and petals in this way. Then we are having, suppose, a stigma. Just a minute. Then we talk about, this is the carpel, and we are having stamen also. Now these stamens are carrying the knob-shaped anther. So basically this part we have to remove. So removal of this part is called as what? Removal of the anther is called as emasculation. And bagging is one of the technique which we have seen. In bagging we have to cover this stigma with a small bag so that undesired pollen grain will not contaminate it. When you are getting desired pollen grain, you are dusting the stigma with the desired pollen grain and again cover it. And if you want, you can use a tag also. So that process is called as tagging. Now I'm taking pollen grains of this color. Suppose these pollen grains, you are dusting on it and again covering it. So you may get desired variety, and this is also called as hybridization technique. So I hope this is all for today, and the important topics of this basic topic which I have discussed today is the characteristics of wind pollinated, insect pollinated and water pollinated plant and flowers. Second question may be asked, the difference between the self-pollination and cross-pollination. Third question may come, what are the conditions for cross-pollination? And fourth, for short note, you may have the question, what do you understand by artificial hybridization? Explain. So when you are explaining in your book, only one word is given, emasculation, but it could have emasculation, bagging and tagging. Some other examples of this we will discuss in next class. Thank you.